All right, let's get started. We have a great panel for you today. We're talking about next-gen small, medium banking, lending, why business as usual won't cut it. The financial services landscape is rapidly evolving. We know that there's a significant amount of change happening. We hear from clients in terms of their changing preferences. At the same time, there's significant regulatory pressures on financial institutions and also non-FIs. And then, of course, there's the change for digitalization, including replatforming, as well as the forces of innovation coming from the fintech community as well. We are going to take you on an amazing journey in the next half hour. We're going to spend some time thinking about what's happening in other jurisdictions that would be of interest into the Canadian market. At the same time, we're going to hear from fintechs operating in the Canadian market and seeing how they're doing things to serve their clients in a differentiated way. And then, of course, we're going to hear from some of the large big banks around how they're managing the forces of change and innovation. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce my panelists. We have Thomas Becher, the head of small medium enterprise banking at SAP Fioneer. We have Sue Noble, VP of Commercial Financial Services Strategy at RBC. Eremina, the SVP of Portfolio Risk at Driven Financial. And last but not least, Robin Stewart, the head of Business Banking Operations at Bank of Montreal. So let's just jump right in. Thomas, I have a question for you. Canada is not often seen as leading in financial services innovation. You've seen a lot in your operations in Europe and abroad. Can you share this global perspective with us on the types of innovation that you're bringing to your clients and how that innovation can be brought to the Canadian market?
Certainly, and welcome to do it. So welcome also this morning from my end. Pleasure to be here on stage. So as a tech vendor, as SAP tech vendor, Fioneer, we see quite a lot of innovations around the globe. And I'm happy to share some of the topics we discuss with clients, with prospects nowadays from Asia, over Europe to South Africa. So there's quite a lot. I can speak, let's say, for half an hour, maybe for 2 hours about these innovations, but I will share some which might resonate here in this market quite well. So I would like to capture my answers along 3 buckets, right? So I would like to focus on customer or operational efficiency, so reducing the TCO for banks and fintechs, on stickiness and revenue growth potential, and the way innovation happens in the future. So first of all, I think AI and data-driven lending underwriting is something we see very often now in the markets, both in Asia. You can think of Unfinance, for instance, but also mention in Europe, ING in Germany, where I was working, for instance. So we see a lot of these capabilities where banks using AI and machine learning to do a lot of automation in the underwriting process front to back. Next, we see the way to improve risk assessment, both credit risk but also non-financial risk management. Here, this capability helps quite a lot. And last but not least, personalization is also quite a huge topic. I think machine learning and AI is a technology, but it becomes really unique when you add the data underneath. So what we see is that leveraging third-party data, performance data from SMEs, where they're working all the day, is crucial, right? And combining both AI and data, this helps banks to do better risk assessment, better customer experience, and so on and so forth. Second, I would like to focus on is the way you can engage with customers. So embedded lending, so bring your great product into the space where an SME is working all the day, like account package provider, like the e-commerce platforms, like in Amazon, here in Canada, for instance, Shopify, you have it. This is unique. It's not about just lead generation from the platform to a bank, but really seriously embed the product deeply where an SME is working by providing, for instance, pre-approved credit facilities. Yeah? This is something which we see and where we advise customers. ING is a good example. We see it also in other markets. And maybe last but not least, all the way of cash flow forecasting and prediction is a topic which is quite interesting on the innovation side, right? And it's not doing cash flow forecasting just for doing this, but rather to provide insights out of the cash flow forecast and make it actionable for SMEs. And I think there's a lot of space where banks and fintechs can earn a lot of money, can create stickiness, where they say, look, we see a shortfall in cash flow. What about we provide you with ABC product idea? Yeah? And this is where we see across the globe a lot of innovations happening.
Thank you. That was amazing. Robin, I know you've been thinking a lot about your clients as well, and I think some of the things that Thomas has mentioned are things that you're also working through. Maybe share a perspective of what's top of mind for Bank of Montreal and your clients?
There's no doubt that I think we are a little bit behind global markets here in Canada with respect to the innovation that we've brought to the small business market, and we do need to hit the gas a little harder than we have. And I think all the ideas that Thomas mentioned are things that we're at the early stages of thinking about and trying to figure out how to deliver to the market. And as a Canadian ecosystem, I think we need to pick up the pace because if we can't innovate ourselves, somebody globally is going to come in and do it for us. And I think that'll be a challenge to all of us. And when I think about the direction of that innovation, there's really only one word that springs to mind for me, and that's simplicity. We need to make it easier for small business owners to deal with their banking needs at the end of the day. And I think all of our innovation concepts, ideas, energy at BMO are focused on how can we make it easier. And the corollary of that idea of making it simple is one of the things I think we really need to be watching out for at this time is fragmentation. With all the players in the market, all the valuable players that we have in the market who are bringing innovative ideas to Canada, the danger is that we may make our individual experiences simple for business owners, but because they have to use 14 of us to put it all together, that simplicity fails. And at ecosystem level becomes complex. And so keeping those experiences integrated, delivering holistic banking needs or holistic financial needs to business owners, and working together. I think I heard somebody on the previous panel say, banks and fintechs, we're not enemies. We need to be partners. And we need to be partners in delivering those innovative, simple, integrated experiences to our clients. The last theme I would say is very much on our mind at BMO is many of these innovations that we talk about are very much data and analytics driven. They need to be in the small business space because that's how we get scale and efficiency. And we need to be very careful because sometimes when we drive off of our data and analytic driven tools, that data and analytics brings with it historic biases and gaps in the marketplace. And we need to be very careful as we transition to this analytics, data, machine learning driven world that we don't leave anybody behind. And we're thinking about the supports and programs we need to put around those tools to make sure that we're recognizing those embedded biases and structural barriers and breaking those down together as we move.
That's a great purpose. I love the theme of simplicity, and let's switch gears for a moment and talk to Eremina about the simplicity and the digitization that you're bringing to Canadians through Driven Financial.
Thank you. Okay, can't agree more on everything that was said above, but let's be realistic. Small business is not the same as consumer. It's way more complex. Given the sheer size of credit, when we talk about up to $500,000 of lending, and paired with, let's call it, lack of data here in Canada, unlike our counterparts in Europe and even in US, we unfortunately do not have ability to provide the same simplistic experiences given where we are today. So this is for sure will not cut it into the future because to earlier point, fragmentation keeps growing and growing. And we're actually supporting some of the customers from BMO, from RBC, from Scotiabank, where we are fulfilling what was not fulfilled by major banking partners. Definitely experience is not great, but the question is how we can make it better. And I will be a little bit controversial about this because fintech, we should be advocating just full digitization. Absolutely, we're striving to be digital. We were able to automate, well, what is available in Canada, but risk controls are still there. So the question is how do we go about it? And in order to survive through these challenging times that we all are here in, we have to supplement what is digitized with manual controls. We're not cutting corners on risk, And this is how we were able to stay alive. This is how we think we can be actually a strong partner to our big banks, is by being prudent about risk, being prudent about underwriting. But yeah, unfortunately, it comes at price of customer at the end of the day, both experience-wise, also price itself. Our lack of data that we don't have here has to be heavy from operational side, and at the end of the day, what do? We're passing it on to customer, again, from both experience standpoint as well as price.
There's really no doubt that one of the things holding us back is a regulatory framework that empowers clients to share their data between us, because really that is the glue that holds the integrated experience together. And I know you might be surprised to hear big banks expressing excitement about open banking and not trepidation, but I couldn't be more excited, because I think it's a necessary step forward for our ecosystem to enable exactly the kind of experiences that we're talking about.
Thank you for actually saying these words. I was trying to avoid to say open banking, but yeah, this is that elephant in the room at the end of the day.
I think the Canadian market has enjoyed, and the large banks have enjoyed a deep amount of consumer trust with the data. And I think those regulatory frameworks, whether it's Retail Payments Activities Act, the consumer-driven banking framework, there's going to be this ability to create essentially an on-ramp for the non-bank players to be able to identify ecosystem partners who have made the investments in the control environments, or really understanding the risks, and therefore share values around protecting the client experience and the client's data. Let's move to Sue for a moment, and also, we'd love to hear your perspectives of how you're also thinking about serving this sector. I know RBC has done a lot in the innovation space, and you think about it a lot.
Yeah, thank you. And I would absolutely agree with all the comments that the panelists have made. I mean, it always starts with the client centricity, understanding the needs of the customer. Small, medium-sized entrepreneurs, incredibly busy, always wearing multiple hats. Speed, I would say simplicity, but also speed is important. And I think one of the differences that banks are doing, we talked about a lot about the data and the innovation and that part, but it's also on the internal side, which may not be as obvious to the outside, is we're reorganizing how we're working around the customer. And so we're really thinking about what is that seamless, frictionless customer experience that we need to create. So you think about a loan application process. Normally in a bank, that takes multiple departments, going all the way from your frontline sales office through to your adjudication teams and all the way through your operations teams to fund the loan. We're bringing all those teams together into agile working groups to really focus on creating a seamless, frictionless experience. And why? That's a huge win-win. It's going to be a win-win for the customer, because at the end of the day, we'll be able to take so much friction out of the system, transform a process that can take days, maybe weeks, I don't know, I'll let the audience tell us, into hours. And that's really, those are the types of goals that we're setting. And then on the banking side, it's a huge win-win too, because you think about relationship managers, sometimes they're actually left navigating some of these processes on behalf of the customer. And so really what they want to be doing is leaning into the advice value propositions that they can bring. So really a win-win. So I think I would share it's just not as obvious from the outside, but banks are really focused on reorganizing themselves internally. The second part we've talked a lot about is, there's an opportunity to create that one-stop shop experience for clients. And so and that goes both from a banking solution perspective, but also beyond banking. And so how do we help serve up, leverage our scale and strength to bring value to our customers? And so that does mean partnering across the ecosystem, both with fintech organizations and even, I would say, government organizations as well. And we're starting to do more and more of that. And that just creates more value for the consumer at the end of the day.
Let me echo what Susan said, and also regarding our headline, why business as usual won't cut it. I can only echo what you said, speaking with a lot of clients around the globe. I think bringing teams together and think one use case really through, from front to back, it will be the key. Because I think nowadays we have a situation where customers expect this digital first experience only. And I think customers will not forgive mistakes in this area, because then they will move to other vendors, right? So I think I can only echo that. And I think if you do it right and be creative also with regulations, right? Because there are also opportunities, not only problems, then I think there's a huge opportunity for all the participants in the market. Huh?
Sue, I know that RBC has done a lot in terms of investments with the fintech community. Can you share maybe some of those use cases for the audience here around how RBC has worked with fintechs?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would highlight a couple areas. I mean, I think organizational design is so important. And so one of the things that we've done to make it easier is set up our RBC Ventures banking unit. And so that unit really is focused on working with different organizations and fintechs and partners. It's outside, it kind of sits outside your traditional banking units. And so, when you think about, speed and agility and all of that, like that banking unit is wired that way. But then we do have really great examples, and maybe one that I would highlight is, again, thinking about that customer journey. We spend a lot of time in the healthcare industry, understanding the needs of medical professionals. And, billing became a big pain point as an example. And so that's just an example where we eventually acquired an organization named Dr. Bill and brought that internally. And so now for our healthcare practitioner clients, we can serve up not only banking capabilities, but also help them run their business with billing capabilities. And so this is the type of thinking that is really going to start to push the envelope. And at the end of the day, it's going to meet the needs of customers.
There's a lot of fintechs in the room right now. And so perhaps one of the questions that I would pose to both Sue and Robin is really around when you are thinking about those partnership opportunities and not necessarily, say, an acquisition, what are the types of things that you are looking for in partners? When we hear from the fintechs, we hear that there's lots and lots of discussions, some carrying on for many years. Then there's also risk assessments upon risk assessments, and then the potential for exposure to PI. And I'm not saying it's specific to any of these organizations on stage, just more broadly, that's a characterization of the market in Canada. I would love your perspectives on that.
Partnership is always an adventure. And I think we've had some very successful experiences at BMO. We've had some less successful experiences. And I think when you bring partners together and align around a common goal, serving the customer, creating a great experience, usually you can figure out the challenges about working between what are two very different styles and types of organizations. I think where I've seen more challenging experiences with partnership has been less empathy and appreciation for what it takes to scale and deliver value to customers at the, in the millions, and to operate effectively in the regulatory framework that we have to operate in here in Canada. We are the envy of the world with our banking system in Canada. There's a reason for that. We have a really strong regulatory framework that makes sure that we protect customers and protect the ecosystem. And I think sometimes as a small tech company, it can be difficult to walk into that environment and appreciate and have empathy and seek to work within it. So something there. And the second thing I would say is there's lots of different ways to partner, and being really thoughtful and innovative about different ways to partner, short-term, long-term, so that the focus is on delivering value and building momentum around the partnership. Those usually are the more successful engagements versus becoming fixated on a particular style of partnership or a particular structure, which can tend to bog conversations down. Sue, anything to add to that?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think the one point I was going to make is the focus on mutual goals. That's critical to set a good foundation. I guess advice I might have for, fintechs or smaller tech companies trying to partner with the big banks is you've got to be in this for the long game. Because we will step through. We do have the regulatory, environment that we have to work through. So I would say that that's one thing. And then, so be willing to take steps in the right direction and not expecting kind of, overnight we're going to fully integrate a solution. I think that's just the reality of where we are at today. And then focusing on I think making sure you're working with the right stakeholder group internally as well. I do see a lot of fintechs who are spending a lot of time banks are really massive organizations. Make sure you've got the right decision makers and the right groups who can make those decisions before you start down that path. Is just one kind of piece of advice that I would give, because many people are always, it's a very heavy matrix organization, and so lots of people will be interested, but make sure you find the individuals that actually are the decision makers at the end of the day.
Fantastic.
To be fair, let me add too, it's not all about what fintechs need to do differently either. I think, I think we can own in the big bank community that we could be a little bit more open to experimentation sometimes, and a little bit more innovative. And I think, we also need to move somewhat to enable the kind of partnership that we're talking about here.
Thomas, your perspective from coming in to this market, agree or disagree?
I fully agree, and I may want to add maybe one or the other thought. I think as a tech company, as a fintech, but also as a bank, at the end, our goal is to fix a real problem with and for our customers. And I think as a fintech, as a tech company, I think make your homework and make yourself clear what is the problem we want to get solved. And then you spoke about regulatory topics. You spoke at the beginning about simplicity. I myself, I was working at ING 4 or 5 years ago, where we start partnering with Amazon, doing embedded lending at large scale. And coming from Germany, GDPR is the highest good you can have. Everyone said, forget about this business, you will never be successful because GDPR is so high. And I said to my team, look guys, we need to make it simple. And by the way, we said to Amazon as well, guys, if we want to join forces, let's keep the customer in mind. What do we want to achieve together? And then be creative, be agile with the solutions. I can only echo what you both you together said. I think if you have a common goal, then the style of partnership will come out of the discussion. And I think nothing is successful than a success, right? So start small. By the way, we started with an development envelope approach to start this business, embedded lending with Amazon. And this was quite successful. And this is what we actually do also as a tech vendor. We advise our customers start small and then grow together.
Fantastic. Eremina, any other thoughts on this?
Yeah, so from the standpoint of what we need to do as fintechs, we need to focus on our strength, which is technology. And we don't have the same need as older players, bigger players, in terms of legacy and ensuring that legacy systems work. So we need to focus on our nimbleness versus, let's call it, oversimplification on the back end. Definitely we need to make it great for the customer, but from the standpoint of how we look at the deal, I don't think we can cut corners here. We need to balance it. But yeah, double down in on our strength, which is fast deployment, and this is how we can, I think, supplement what banks are struggling with for the right reason. Again, regulator is there for a reason, to protect the customer at the end of the day. But we need to fill in that gap, and we need to remember that. So coming with a good solution with open mind and understanding where a bank is coming from, I think that is definitely the right way to go.
I just want to pick up on something you said, because I do think that there's an opportunity to kind of sandbox or co-create, right? And so that sometimes is a bit easier. And you just kind of sandbox an idea, a concept, and you get into co-create. Then you kind of go slow, you move, improve as you go. You come out in an iterative approach. And that also is a way that works.
And I think there's room for both the industry-wide sandboxes as well as institution-specific sandboxes. I think this is a really exciting time for us in that there's no one solution for the one problem. I think there's multiple ways to look at partnerships and innovation together. Okay, so so what I heard here on this panel, we heard a lot about client centricity. We heard a lot about simplicity. I think there's acknowledgement that the regulatory landscape makes it sometimes very difficult for partnerships or even for large incumbents to bring that innovation to clients. But we know that there's regulatory changes afoot. We hope that that may take time, but this is going to be more of an evolution versus revolution. And I think what we also heard from is there are multiple ways to look at partnership. There's not one solution, and there are going to be, I think, in front of us, a lot of innovation in the years to come. I want to thank our panelists for joining us today, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day at the summit. Thank you.